Standing outside my parents' house after 4 years of complete silence, I gripped the keys in my trembling hand. The sound of laughter drifted through the windows, the same kind of warm family gathering I used to be part of. But everything had changed since that night when my father looked me straight in the eye and said those words that shattered my world. "She's a doctor, and you're just a Target cashier." Tonight they would discover just how wrong they were about their daughter. Tonight they would learn what this Target cashier had become. Before I tell you what happened when I walked through that door, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt underestimated by your own family, and do not forget to subscribe because this story is about to get very interesting. Now let me take you back to where it all began 4 years ago at what I thought would be a simple family dinner. My name is Zoe, and I grew up in a middle-class family in suburban Ohio where appearances meant everything. My father worked as an accountant for 30 years before retiring, and my mother taught elementary school for most of her career. They were good people, hardworking and honest, but they carried this deep-seated belief that success was measured by your job title and how much money you made. Education was sacred in our house, and academic achievements were celebrated like national holidays. When I was 24, I was working at Target after dropping out of college during my junior year. It was not because I was lazy or lacked ambition. The truth was, my family was struggling financially. My father's retirement fund had taken a hit during the economic downturn, and they were having trouble making their mortgage payments. My mother's teacher salary barely covered the basics, and my father's pension was smaller than expected. I made the difficult decision to leave school and get a job to help support them, contributing about $600 a month from my Target salary to help keep our family home. The irony was not lost on me that while I was working retail to help save their house, they were embarrassed by what I did for a living. But I understood their perspective. In their generation, a college degree guaranteed stability and respect. Without one, you were seen as someone who had given up on their dreams. The person who constantly reminded me of what I was not achieving was my cousin Jessica. She was 2 years older than me and had just completed her residency in pediatric medicine. Jessica came from a different branch of the family tree, one where money had never been an issue. Her parents, my uncle and aunt, were both successful lawyers who easily afforded her undergraduate degree at Northwestern and then medical school at Johns Hopkins. She graduated with honors, landed a prestigious residency at Cleveland Clinic, and was now making more money than my parents had ever seen. Jessica was beautiful, accomplished, and confident in that way that only comes from never having to worry about money. She drove a brand new BMW, lived in a luxury apartment downtown, and wore designer clothes like they were casual weekend outfits. But what bothered me most about Jessica was not her success. It was her attitude toward people she considered beneath her. She had this way of looking at service workers, retail employees, and anyone in what she called unskilled jobs like they were invisible. When we went to restaurants together, she would snap her fingers at waiters and never say please or thank you. She treated my job at Target like it was a temporary phase I would eventually grow out of, not understanding that I was there by choice to help my family. The evening that changed everything started like any other family gathering. My parents had organized a dinner party to celebrate Jessica finishing her residency program. The dining room was decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Dr. Jessica." My mother had spent the entire day cooking Jessica's favorite foods, and my father had bought an expensive bottle of champagne for the toast. I arrived straight from my 8-hour shift at Target, still wearing my red polo shirt and khakis. My feet were sore from standing all day, and I was exhausted from dealing with difficult customers and covering for a coworker who had called in sick. But I was genuinely happy for Jessica and wanted to celebrate her achievement. Medical school was incredibly challenging, and I respected the dedication it took to become a doctor. From the moment I walked in, the conversation revolved entirely around Jessica's accomplishments. My parents hung on her every word as she described her residency experiences, her starting salary, and her plans to specialize in pediatric cardiology. She talked about the luxury apartment she was moving into, the new car she was buying, and the vacation to Europe she was planning to celebrate her new job. I tried to join the conversation by sharing some positive news about my own life. I had been taking online business courses in the evenings and was developing a plan to eventually return to school. I had also been promoted to a team leader position at Target, which came with a small raise and more responsibilities. But every time I spoke, the conversation would somehow circle back to Jessica and her medical career. My father kept making comments like, "Jessica is such an inspiration," and "We are so proud to have a doctor in the family." My mother nodded enthusiastically and kept asking Jessica for advice about various medical issues, treating her like she was the family's personal physician. The way they looked at Jessica with such admiration and respect made it clear that they wished I could be more like her. As the evening progressed, I began to feel like an outsider at my own family's dinner table. Every story Jessica told about saving lives and helping children made my job scanning barcodes and folding clothes seem meaningless in comparison. I started to withdraw from the conversation, eating quietly and counting the minutes until I could politely excuse myself and go home. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when my father started making subtle but cutting remarks about my life choices. "Jessica has always been so focused and driven," he said, glancing at me. "It is amazing what you can accomplish when you set your mind to it and do not give up." The implication was clear. I had given up, and I lacked the drive and focus that Jessica possessed. When Jessica excused herself to take a phone call from the hospital where she would be starting her fellowship, my father turned to me with a serious expression. "Zoe, when are you going to get serious about your future? You cannot work retail forever." His tone was disapproving and impatient, like he was talking to a teenager who refused to clean their room. I felt my chest tighten with frustration and hurt. Here I was working full-time and contributing financially to keep their house, and he was treating me like I was wasting my life. I decided to leave early, mumbling something about being tired from work. As I gathered my things, I could feel the weight of their disappointment pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. That night, lying in my small apartment, I could not shake the feeling that no matter what I did or how hard I worked, I would never be good enough for my family. I was the Target cashier, and Jessica was the doctor, and in their minds that said everything they needed to know about our respective worth as human beings. 2 weeks after that uncomfortable dinner, I decided I needed to have an honest conversation with my parents about how their constant comparisons made me feel. I had been carrying this hurt around for too long, and it was affecting my self-esteem and our relationship. I called my mother and asked if we could sit down and talk as a family about some things that had been bothering me. When I arrived at their house that Saturday afternoon, both my parents were waiting in the living room with serious expressions on their faces. I could tell they thought I was going to ask them for money or announce some kind of crisis. Instead, I sat down across from them and tried to explain how isolated and undervalued I felt. "I know my job is not as prestigious as Jessica's," I began carefully, "but I want you to understand that I am working hard and contributing to this family. I chose to leave school to help with the financial situation here, and I have been giving you $600 every month to help with the mortgage. I am not asking you to be proud of my job, but I am asking you to respect the sacrifices I have made." My father's reaction was immediate and harsh. His face flushed red and he leaned forward in his chair with an expression I had never seen before. "Sacrifices," he said, his voice rising. "What sacrifices? You dropped out of college because it was too hard and now you are working a dead-end job with no future. Do not try to make yourself sound like some kind of martyr." I was stunned by the venom in his voice. My mother sat silently beside him, her hands folded in her lap, looking uncomfortable but not saying anything to defend me. "Dad, that is not fair," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I left school because we were going to lose the house. You were behind on mortgage payments and Mom's salary was not enough to cover everything. I got a job to help save our home." "You are 24 years old and still working retail," he shouted, standing up from his chair. "Jessica saves lives. What do you do? Scan barcodes, help people find the bathroom. I am ashamed when people ask me what my daughter does for a living." Each word felt like a physical blow. I had expected him to be disappointed in my career choices, but I had not expected him to be ashamed of me. My mother finally spoke up, but her words were weak and ineffective. "Harold, calm down," she said quietly. "Zoe is doing her best." "Her best?" my father snapped. "Her best is working at Target. Her best is giving up on education and settling for minimum wage. Jessica's best is becoming a doctor and making a real difference in the world." I tried one more time to explain my perspective to help him understand that not everyone has the same opportunities or support systems. Dad, Jessica's parents paid for her entire education. She never had to work during college or worry about student loans. She had tutors and test prep and every advantage money could buy. My situation is different. But he was not interested in hearing explanations. In his mind, success was a choice, and I had chosen failure. "Stop making excuses," he said coldly. "Jessica worked hard for everything she achieved. She did not sit around feeling sorry for herself or blaming other people for her problems." The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. My mother went to answer it, and moments later, Jessica walked into the living room with her usual confident smile. She was wearing scrubs from her shift at the hospital, and she looked tired but satisfied in that way that comes from having a meaningful job. "I hope I am not interrupting anything," she said, looking around at our tense faces. "I just wanted to stop by and thank you again for the wonderful dinner party. It meant so much to have family support as I start this new chapter in my career." My father's entire demeanor changed when he saw Jessica. The anger and frustration melted away, replaced by warmth and pride. "Jessica," he said, his voice full of affection, "we were just talking about career goals and life choices. Maybe you could share some wisdom with Zoe about the importance of education and professional development. What happened next will be burned into my memory forever." My father looked directly at me, then at Jessica, and said the words that would destroy our relationship for the next 4 years. "She's a doctor, and you are just a Target cashier." He paused for effect, making sure the comparison landed with maximum impact. "Jessica is everything I wanted in a daughter." The room fell completely silent. Jessica looked uncomfortable for the first time since I had known her, and my mother gasped audibly. But the damage was done. Those words hung in the air like poison, contaminating everything they touched. I felt something break inside my chest, like a dam bursting and releasing years of accumulated pain and disappointment. This was not just criticism of my career choices. This was a complete rejection of who I was as a person. My father had essentially told me that I was not the daughter he wanted, that everything I had done and sacrificed meant nothing to him. I stood up slowly, feeling dizzy and disconnected from my own body. "I understand now," I said quietly, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "I finally understand exactly what you think of me." Without saying another word, I walked to the door and left their house. Behind me, I could hear my mother calling my name, but I did not turn around. I got in my car and drove home in a state of shocked tears streaming down my face as the full weight of my father's words settled over me. That night, lying alone in my apartment, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I was done trying to earn their approval and respect. I was done being compared to Jessica and found wanting. If my father thought I was just a Target cashier with no potential, I would prove him wrong. But I would do it on my own terms without their support or encouragement. I spent hours researching real estate investment strategies, business development courses, and financial planning resources. If I was going to show them what I was capable of, I needed a plan that would generate real wealth and financial independence. By sunrise, I had decided to cut off all contact with my family and focus entirely on building something that would make them see me differently. The last text message I sent to my parents was simple: "I will not be contacting you for a while. When I am ready to talk again, you will understand why. Then I blocked their phone numbers, deleted their social media contacts, and began the most challenging and transformative period of my life. The next 4 years of my life were defined by complete silence from my family and an obsessive focus on building wealth through real estate investment. I did not answer their calls, respond to their letters, or acknowledge their attempts to reach out through mutual friends and extended family members. I had made a promise to myself that I would not speak to them again until I could do so from a position of strength and financial independence. My strategy was methodical and disciplined. I kept my job at Target because it provided steady income and health benefits, but I also took on a second job working evenings at a local restaurant. Between my two jobs, I was working nearly 70 hours per week, but every extra dollar went toward my investment fund. I lived in the cheapest apartment I could find, drove a 10-year-old car that I maintained myself, and eliminated every unnecessary expense from my budget. While working these demanding schedules, I spent every free moment educating myself about real estate investing. I read books, watched online courses, listened to podcasts during my commute, and studied successful investors' strategies. I learned about different types of investment properties, financing options market analysis, and property management techniques. After 18 months of aggressive saving and learning, I had enough money for a down payment on my first investment property. It was a small duplex in a working-class neighborhood that needed significant repairs, but was priced well below market value. I used a Veterans Affairs loan, taking advantage of a program I qualified for due to my brief service in the National Guard during college. The renovation process was grueling. I spent every weekend and most evenings learning carpentry, plumbing, and electrical work through YouTube videos and help from experienced contractors who took pity on my determination. I made countless mistakes, but I also learned skills that would save me thousands of dollars on future projects. Once the duplex was renovated, I was able to rent both units for significantly more than my mortgage payment, creating positive cash flow that I immediately reinvested. Within 6 months, I had saved enough for a down payment on my second property, a single-family house that I purchased, renovated, and rented to a young family. My third and fourth properties came in rapid succession as I refined my system and built relationships with real estate agents, contractors, and property management companies. I developed a reputation in the local investment community as someone who worked harder than anyone else and delivered results consistently. By my fourth year of silence, I owned 5 rental properties that generated enough passive income to replace my salary from both jobs. I had also built up a substantial emergency fund and had excellent credit that allowed me access to better financing options for future investments. But the most important development during this period was not financial, it was personal. I had discovered that I was capable of much more than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined. The shy, insecure young woman who had been ashamed of working at Target had become a confident entrepreneur who could analyze markets, manage contractors, and build wealth through strategic investing. During my fourth year of silence, I learned through a mutual friend that my parents were facing serious financial difficulties. My father's pension fund had been mismanaged by his former employer, and they had lost most of their retirement savings. Their house, the same one I had helped them save years earlier, was in foreclosure proceedings. They were being forced to sell and had been looking for an affordable rental property where they could live on his reduced Social Security income. The irony was overwhelming. While I had been building a real estate portfolio, they had been losing the home I had once sacrificed my education to help them keep. But what struck me most was learning that Jessica, their golden child, had not offered any financial assistance despite her high income as a practicing physician. She was too busy with her own life and career to be bothered with their problems. This information gave me an idea for how to reveal my transformation in the most impactful way possible. I contacted the bank handling the foreclosure and made an offer to purchase my parents' house for cash. The transaction went through quickly, and within 30 days, I was the legal owner of the home where I had grown up. My plan was simple but dramatic. I would show up at their house just as they were preparing to move out and reveal that not only had I become a successful real estate investor, but I now owned their home and controlled their immediate future. It would be the ultimate reversal of the power dynamic that had defined our relationship for so many years. On a crisp October evening, exactly 4 years after I had walked out of their house, I drove slowly down the familiar street where I had grown up. My heart was pounding as I parked in the driveway and noticed the moving boxes stacked on the front porch. Through the living room window, I could see my parents and several family friends packing their belongings and preparing for what they thought would be their final departure from the home they had lived in for 25 years. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering courage and reviewing what I planned to say. This moment had been building for 4 years, and I wanted to handle it with dignity and purpose rather than revenge or cruelty. My goal was not to humiliate them, but to demonstrate that they had completely misjudged my potential and character. When I finally walked up to the front door and knocked, I could hear conversation stop abruptly inside the house. My mother opened the door and her face went through a series of emotions: surprise, joy, confusion, and concern. "Zoe!" she whispered, tears immediately filling her eyes. "Oh my God, where have you been? We have been so worried about you." My father appeared behind her, looking older and more tired than I remembered. The confidence and authority that had once intimidated me were gone, replaced by the defeated posture of a man facing financial ruin in his retirement years. "Zoe," he said quietly, "we did not know if we would ever see you again." "I know about the house," I said, simply stepping inside without being invited. The living room was filled with boxes and looked strange and empty, without the furniture and decorations that had defined it for so many years. "I know about the foreclosure and the financial problems. I know you have to leave." My mother started crying harder, and my father's shoulders slumped with shame. "We wanted to call you," my mother said through her tears, "but we did not know how to reach you, and we were too embarrassed to ask anyone for help finding you. We did not want you to see us like this." This was the moment I had been waiting for, but seeing their pain and humiliation made me feel less triumphant than I had expected. These were still my parents, and despite everything that had happened between us, I did not take pleasure in their suffering. "You do not have to leave," I said calmly, pulling a folder of documents from my bag. "I bought the house from the bank 3 weeks ago. I am the new owner." The silence that followed was profound. My father stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, and my mother stopped crying from pure shock. The family friends who had been helping them pack stood frozen with boxes in their hands, not sure if they were witnessing good news or bad news. "That is impossible," my father said finally. "You work at Target. You do not have that kind of money." I spread the ownership documents on their dining room table, showing the deed, the purchase agreement, and the bank statements that proved I had bought their house with cash. "I have not worked at Target for 2 years," I said. "I own 5 rental properties and generate more passive income per month than you ever made working full-time." My mother sat down heavily in one of the few remaining chairs, staring at the documents like they might disappear if she looked away. "I do not understand," she said weakly. "How is this possible? Where did you get the money? What have you been doing for 4 years?" I explained my real estate investment strategy, showing them photographs of my properties and financial statements that documented my success. I told them about the long hours, the educational process, the calculated risks, and the gradual building of wealth through strategic property purchases and renovations. My father picked up one of the financial statements and studied it carefully with his accountant's eye for detail. When he looked up at me, his expression was completely different from anything I had seen before. "You did all of this yourself?" he asked, "while we thought you were still working retail?" "I did it because you told me I was just a Target cashier," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "I did it because you said Jessica was everything you wanted in a daughter. I wanted to show you what your actual daughter was capable of." The room fell silent again as the full weight of the situation settled over everyone present. In 4 years of silence, I had completely transformed my life and achieved a level of financial success that none of them had thought possible. But more than that, I had done it entirely through my own effort and determination without any help or support from family. "We were wrong," my father said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were completely wrong about you, and I am ashamed of how we treated you. The things I said that night were cruel and unfair, and I have regretted them every day since you left." My mother was crying again, but these were different tears. "We lost our daughter because we could not see how special she already was," she said. "We were so focused on what we thought success should look like that we missed what you were actually accomplishing." I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness as I watched them grapple with this new reality. This moment of recognition was what I had worked toward for 4 years, but achieving it felt more complex than I had expected. "You can stay in the house," I said, "but there will be conditions." I explained that they would need to pay rent like any other tenants, but the amount would be affordable based on their actual income. More importantly, the rental income from my other 4 properties would go into a trust fund that would provide for their retirement and long-term care needs. They would be financially secure for the rest of their lives, but they would also understand that their security depended on the success of their target cashier daughter. "There is one more condition," I said, looking directly at my father. "You need to call Jessica and tell her what happened here today. Tell her that the daughter you were ashamed of is now providing for your retirement, while the daughter you were proud of was nowhere to be found when you needed help." Over the following months, my parents and I slowly rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect rather than expectation and disappointment. They came to understand that success takes many different forms and that financial independence was more valuable than job titles or social status. My father, in particular, became genuinely interested in real estate investing and helped me analyze potential new properties using his accounting skills. Jessica predictably tried to reestablish contact with me once she learned about my financial success. She sent messages through family members and eventually showed up at one of my properties, hoping to rebuild our relationship and perhaps benefit from my business connections. But I was not interested in rekindling a friendship that had been based on her superiority and my perceived inadequacy. I politely but firmly declined her overtures. The most important lesson I learned during those 4 years of silence was that other people's opinions of your worth are often based on limited information and their own insecurities. My parents' obsession with Jessica's medical degree was really about their own fears of not being successful enough themselves. By rejecting me for working at Target, they were trying to distance themselves from their own feelings of financial inadequacy. But I also learned that proving people wrong is less satisfying than proving yourself right. Building wealth and achieving financial independence felt good because it gave me security and options, not because it made my family regret their treatment of me. The real victory was discovering that I was capable of much more than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined. Today, I continue to grow my real estate portfolio and have expanded into commercial properties and real estate development. My parents live comfortably in their old house now, understanding that their retirement security depends on the business acumen of the daughter they once dismissed. And while I have forgiven them for their hurtful words and limited vision, I have never forgotten the lesson that sometimes the people who believe in you least are the ones who need your success the most. Sometimes the people who underestimate us the most are the ones who end up needing us the most. Success is not about proving others wrong, it is about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. I want to ask you something that relates to this whole experience. Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you, and how did you handle it? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one and love hearing your stories. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help more people find it. Do not forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories about overcoming family challenges and building financial independence. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about not giving up on themselves, please share this video with them. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to prove your own worth to yourself, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Until next time, remember that your value is not determined by other people's limited vision of what you can achieve.